And our last speaker for this session is Melanie Isaacs. Melanie has been a director of the community group Team Dog since 2013, focusing on pet owner support, progressive shelter strategies, and advocacy work. She spent many years working in animal management in New South Wales and holds a Certificate 3 in dog behaviour and training. She attended internships with various well-respected organisations in the USA in 2013 and 14 to gain an insight into pet owner support programs, focusing on keeping pets with their families and preventing surrenders. Her passion lies with open-minded and caring approaches to pet owner interactions and positive legislative reform. Will you please welcome Melanie Isaacs?
Thank you. That was lovely. Thank you for that. I want to talk to everyone a little bit today about what it is that we do at Team Dog. We're big believers in our programs, and I'm going to specifically talk to you about our pound intervention and pet owner support programs, and touch on how maybe if you guys are inspired, you could potentially do the same in shelters or even in separate groups like we are. Green button, apparently. So who are Team Dog? We are a registered charity. We're based mainly in Sydney, but we do provide assistance in Greater New South Wales and sometimes in the ACT, depending on the type of assistance. Consists of 2 directors, myself and my counterpart Darren, and we've also got 5 amazing community support workers who assist us. We're all volunteers, we all work full-time as well, so we don't get a lot of sleep, but we get a lot of satisfaction. And we were established in August 2013. So what do we do? One of the biggest things is that we are not rescue. Our focus is on keeping pets in the homes that they already have. There are already so many rescue groups doing amazing jobs, and we didn't think we could better that, and we didn't think adding another rescue doing the same thing was necessarily the best idea. And we thought doing something that's a little bit unique, at least in Australia, could have a bigger impact. We do help cats too, despite the name. We didn't necessarily think so far ahead with that, but we're cat lovers as well. So as long as they have owners that love them and want to keep them, we're there to help. We do run a pound enrichment program too that we've implemented at a couple of pounds in Sydney, again trying to improve the quality of life as we've seen earlier today, and improve adoption rates as well. And also advocacy. We're all passionate about various topics and passionate about improving things. So we have an advocacy arm as well. Why do we do it? I was inspired by some really successful programs in the US, one of them actually being Pets for Life that we saw this morning. I saw a presentation on that 2 years ago at the Humane Society's conference. It was amazing, and various other groups there as well. There's, as I said before, there's already so many rescues focusing on rehoming, so we're doing something a little bit different. We sort of found that there's actually quite little focus on reclaim and pet retention at this point in Australia, and there certainly was even less, I should say, 2 years ago when we started. It's much bigger thing in the US, and we thought, why not bring it here? We're big believers that ongoing high release rates in our shelters is very difficult. Without a good pet retention program, you'll eventually start running into problems, which we heard a little bit about. People end up not reclaiming their pets, they get a new pet, it keeps on going. And we're big believers that the space in shelters and rescues, what we know is limited space often, it really needs to be reserved for the pets that actually truly do need new homes. Pets with homes and with owners that love them shouldn't be in our shelters. They should be going home or not getting in there in the first place. And of course, big on improving the human-canine bond and the human-feline bond, and promoting safe communities for both people and their pets. Our core values are education and assistance before punishment. Again, a lot of what we saw this morning, all of those things I loved hearing. We really try and have that open-minded and non-judgmental approach, because as we heard this morning, if you really come at people in a really negative, judgmental way, you're never going to get anywhere. And someone came to me in a judgmental way, and even if they were offering me assistance, I'd probably tell them to get stuffed. And I think most people are, it's human nature. One of our big things is there is no proof of poverty required. So we don't require that someone has a pension card or some kind of proof that they are living in poverty or struggling with finances, because we actually believe that having such a thing would really, really have a negative impact on the people that we can help. There are so many people out there that might not qualify for a pension card or maybe completely illiterate and haven't ever gotten one, but they are in need of help, they are in need of assistance, and so we don't want to knock them out. And we also find that a lot of what we do is sometimes there's a time limit on it, or people don't have access to scanners and printers, and if we're having to get people to scan and email us a copy of their pension card, it just becomes too difficult. And we're big believers that most people are doing the right thing, and if a couple of people get help from us when they didn't necessarily need it, that's not the end of the world if it means that everyone that needs the help actually gets it. And we do believe that the vast majority of pet owners love their pets. We're huge believers in that. Even the people that we might look at and think are not doing everything we would expect, it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't love their pets and they wouldn't accept help to improve that. And we also don't think that making mistakes, a lack of education or poor access to resources, that doesn't mean that someone should then lose their pet, and it certainly doesn't help our goal of reducing euthanasia rates. So our programs, the first up one, and I guess the one that we probably spend the most amount of time on, is our pound intervention program, which is mainly involved in the payment of reclaim fees. So in New South Wales, we have lifetime registration. You pay it once, you do not renew it yearly, and there is a big price differential for a desex versus a non-desex pet, which is great. We're all for rewarding people for desexing their pets. The problem is an animal cannot be released from a shelter without that registration being paid. And registration for a non-desex pet is $192 and $52 for desexed, or $20 if they're a pensioner and they're desexed. So you're looking at already $192 straight up for a non-desex pet that hasn't been registered. And then when you're looking at all the other fees, in Sydney shelters, I sort of had a chat to them all and figured it out that, a non-desex, non-chip pet, you're paying between $263 and $389, depending on the shelter, to get the pet out within an hour of it turning up, which a lot of people are struggling with. And of course, we know the daily fee increases every day. Sometimes people have 2 pets in the pound, and then it's really getting out of reach. What we find happens is that people are given the price, they spend 2 or 3 days scrabbling up all the money they can, talking to their family and friends and borrowing money, and they might get that $389. But of course, 3 days later, the cost has potentially gone up $40 a day. It's then out of reach, and it quickly sort of spirals out of control, and that pet doesn't get reclaimed. Of course, once it isn't reclaimed, it becomes part of the system. It might be killed. It may then take up space for a pet that actually truly needs that spot. And obviously, pets that aren't desexed or microchips, a lot of the time it is due to funds, lack of funds. So those are the people that are going to have the really high fees to pay, and they're obviously the least likely to actually be able to afford it and get their pets home. So our process, the owner makes contact either via email, website, or on Facebook. We don't have a phone number as yet. I'd like to get one eventually, but because we are all volunteers and work full time and we alternate days, it's not possible at this point. We gather the information we needed, and it's all through conversations. So there's no forms to fill out, there's no lengthy questionnaires. We really think that they're just a barrier to talking to people. There's nothing that I can learn from a form that I couldn't learn from just having a conversation with someone. Alternately, there's a lot that I could learn from a conversation that I can't learn from a form. So we actually just don't think they're useful. We find out which pound, how much is needed, what's the breakdown of those fees. We talk to them about if they're interested in desexing. Depending on the pound, some of them will be happy to send a pet off for desexing prior to release. And if the owner does have a pension card, that brings the cost down to $20 rather than $192. So we typically end up paying the same, but a desexed pet goes home, so that's always great. A lot of pounds don't offer that though. We find out how much the owner can contribute. We encourage them to contribute as much as they possibly can. We stress to them that we are a charity, we run on donations, and the less we have to spend on them, the more we can spend on the next person. And we find the vast majority of people can contribute something or do their best to, get money together, and a lot of them donate back to us afterwards, but we don't have a requirement for that. And we talk about how the pet escaped and can we prevent it escaping again? Can we help them with some fencing or give them some advice? Or if the pet isn't desexed, maybe we say it's a male, this could be why. So it is it's not just to get the pet home and we don't care about the outcome. If this is an ongoing issue, we'll help with that as well to hopefully make sure that pet doesn't end up back in the pound again. We confirm with the pound, can they reduce the fees at all? Some of the pounds we work with are great and reduce a lot of those fees down. Some of them can't. Obviously it makes it more difficult for us to assist if they can't. Then we organise the payment, or sometimes if our funds are running low, we'll actually run a fundraiser for individual people and get those funds together. And then that ongoing support. And that was just a lovely little picture before of someone that we've helped. I'm going to go very quickly on the stories because I don't have enough time to elaborate, but this is one of the families that we helped. Larry took Sylvia in off the streets 6 years prior to us coming in contact with him. She was astray, she was sick and hungry, and he wasn't able to find her owners, so he took her in. And he had her for 6 years. At some point during those 6 years, he actually became homeless himself. And he kept Sylvia with him throughout that and cared for her. Sylvia went missing about 2 to 3 months before we got in contact with Larry, and he didn't give up. He kept searching for her for 3 months until he finally found her in Campbelltown Pound. The fees, obviously being homeless, the fees were very much out of his reach. Campbelltown were amazing and dropped all fees bar the compulsory undesexed cat registration, $192. And his brother actually got in contact with us to see if we could help. His brother covered 100 of the fees and we covered the rest, and Sylvia went home. And the pound even donated a cat carrier, which was amazing. The little twist to the story actually that's happened since I put this together is Larry actually passed away about a month after he'd reclaimed Sylvia of natural causes. And his brother Wayne said that the fact that he had Sylvia with him for the last month of his life hugely impacted on his welfare. And that's a lot of the reason why we do this. We're just as much for people as we are for pets. And we sort of put a call out and found an amazing foster home for Sylvia, and she's doing really well. That's her in her new foster home, those second photos. She had to have a little bit of a shave. She was a bit matted after her 3-month gallivanting around, so she's wearing her cute little coat. So our other program that's takes up most of the rest of our time is our pet owner support program. This is, I guess, for pets that aren't already impounded, but that's potentially what might happen if we don't intervene. Again, the owner gets in contact with us. We provide assistance to resolve whatever the problem is in their scenario. So that might be that we make trainer recommendations, and if they're struggling with fees, we've got some great trainers that offer low cost or free consults, and we can sometimes cover the rest. We can help with securing the property if they're getting out. We can assist with low cost basic vet work, so desexing, microchipping, those sorts of things. We're currently not resourced for major vet bills, foster care or long-term boarding, but we will help sometimes in a short, if someone's got a new rental property to move into in a month's time, a week or two, and they just need something in the interim, we can potentially help with that, and we don't obviously rehome. We'd like to be more resourced for those things in the future, but at this point we refer on to other organisations. And there's a very cute photo of Samantha and Billy and her kids. Billy ended up in the pound and she couldn't afford to get him out, so we assisted with that. He'd gone missing and she was so pleased to have him home. You can see that on her face. Max and Janelle is a good example of the pet owner support. Janelle got in touch. She was a victim of domestic violence. Her husband was in jail and she had moved in with her brother. The property's fencing was completely inadequate, and it was housing, so they couldn't really do much to alter that. And Max was escaping all the time. He was about 8 months old, lovely dog, but she also couldn't afford to chip him desex him and do all the things that she really wanted to do for him. So she actually approached us initially asking if we could help with rehoming, and we obviously came back and said, we don't do rehoming, but tell us a bit more about your story. And as soon as we heard what the situation was, we said, well, look, can we help you with the desexing and chipping and a vaccination, and can we get you a dog run so that Max is kept safe? And she was just beside herself. She kept saying, I didn't know anything like you existed. And we said, well, there's not many like us, but we're more than happy to help you out. And we got all those things for her. We had a chipping day a few days later, so that's Janelle and Max at our chipping day after he'd had his microchip. That's him with just a tiny amount of the food that we gave her because she was struggling to afford food. We gave her at least a few months' worth, and him in his new dog run. We've recently referred her for a training session too, just he's very excitable, funny boy, so she needs a bit of help with getting him a bit more under control. The pet owner support program, we also do help a lot with breed-specific legislation cases. We are strongly and fundamentally against breed-specific legislation, as should any organisation that's done even a cursory amount of research into the topic. We assist owners who are trying to navigate this legislation in New South Wales. It is designed to be difficult. It is designed to kill people's dogs. So in New South Wales, if a council attempts to declare your dog to be a restricted dog, you can seek a breed and temperament assessment. If your dog passes those assessments, your dog is not a restricted dog and it's treated like any other dog. Those assessments typically cost about $305 and need to be done within 28 days. So I can't tell you how many dogs are being declared restricted dogs who wouldn't be if the owner had the money to pay for those assessments. So we do assist with that. We also negotiate with the councils on behalf of the owners. We've dealt with some wonderful councils. We really, we're certainly not anti-council. I've worked in animal management myself. We love working with those councils, and we would never expect any of them to contravene the Act while it's in force. But we do expect that they're doing everything they can to give that individual dog the best chance of success within the legislation. If the council isn't doing that, if it's refusing to allow options for dogs, and unfortunately we do sometimes have some councils that really overstep the boundaries and lie or do things that the legislation doesn't allow them to do. And if we can't discuss with them and reach a good agreement, we will actually run campaigns. We have done a few and we've been very successful for the animals and their owners. Scott and Kira are one of those. Very quickly, Kira is 11, or probably coming up to 12 now. She was microchipped as a purebred American Pit Bull Terrier as a puppy. Scott had no idea. It was the vet, actually, I think it was the vet convinced Scott that that was a good idea. And Scott said, I don't actually think my dog is a purebred American Pit Bull Terrier. And the vet said, well, I think it is. And look, if you decide you want to, you can change the breed later, which is completely incorrect. Because Scott is such a great owner, Kira never came to any council's attention in 11 years and then escaped in a storm and ended up at the pound, and she was designated a restricted dog because of her microchip. And we actually got in touch with the council. It was Hurstville Council in Sydney. They were absolutely wonderful. Andrew Charles, the officer that I dealt with, was fantastic. Because it was a bit of a weird situation, there's very few dogs that are chipped as pit bulls due to the legislation. He actually hadn't navigated the system before. He kept saying, I'm happy for him to have a breed and temperament assessment. And I actually had to say, he can't because of the legislation, and there was something that the council actually had to do to allow that, and it was 100% at their discretion. So he could have just said to me, nope, too bad, we're not releasing the dog unless he builds a massive cage with a concrete floor and everything else. But I sort of took him through that, so he knew that that was an option, and he did what he needed to do. Kira passed her assessments and went home. And we encourage all our supporters to really thank Hurstville Council, and they got a flood of messages on their Facebook page, which made us happy because they didn't have to do that and they did the right thing, and that was great. We will provide assistance to pet owners that are dealing with councils in sort of nuisance, menacing, dangerous dog situations, which is obviously dogs that have been involved in an incident as opposed to restricted dogs that typically haven't. It's just their appearance that they're being targeted for. In those situations, obviously, because there has been an incident, we take a lot of care to ascertain what had happened, how it happened, has it happened before, what the owner has done since to prevent it happening again, are they taking it seriously? If we're not happy with the way that they're dealing with that situation and we think their dog could be a danger to the community, we won't really get involved. We'll just make sure they know their rights and otherwise advise them to get legal advice, because we are, people say deed not breed, but sometimes they also then decide not deed either. But we're very much that if a dog is a problem in the community, well, maybe a declaration does need to be made, and we will support councils in that situation. If the incident's minor, the owner's taking it seriously, they've already done a bunch of things to, before the council even turned up at their door to make sure it couldn't happen again, well, then we'll assist them with, their representations and maybe have a chat to the council and see if we can come to a solution that's good for the community and for the dog. This was one of those situations. The dogs are Kaya and Calais, and Sev and the rest of the family. These dogs are just so loved and so well looked after, and lovely dogs and great with dogs, live with cats, live with the kids, go to the dog park. And the owner just adores them, and they're very well looked after. And unfortunately, they got out one night. They hadn't gotten out before. Sev was posting on social media at 2 a.m. and people were out in the streets because she was so distressed helping her try and find her dogs. So, it wasn't a normal thing for them to escape. Unfortunately, they did kill a cat while they were out, and they were impounded. We intervened, had a chat to them. We were very satisfied that this was a real freak incident and that the dogs weren't a danger to the community as long as they were well contained, and had a chat to Campbelltown Council, who we love dealing with, and we helped them fix their fencing and ensure, we purchased some fencing for them, and they put it all together. Campbelltown were happy to not go ahead with the declaration because the family lives in housing. If the dogs were declared as menacing or dangerous, they can't be kept there, and you can't rehome a menacing or dangerous dog in New South Wales. So these dogs actually would have ended up dead, which they're not a danger to the community. They're just dogs that just need to be well contained. So that was a really good outcome. That was a year ago, and there's been no further issues with them at all. So, what are our results? In 2014, which is our first year that we really focused on it and got into it seriously, and there was only 2 of us at that time, myself and Darren, we did help 36 pets. 32 of those were dogs and 4 were cats, and we actually had 12 BSL cases, which was breed-specific legislation. At the end of 2014, we brought in some wonderful community support workers, just giving us more bandwidth. We had so much more time to help, to intervene. And so far in 2015, at the time I wrote this, it was 81 pets. I think we're at about 83, 84 now. 63 dogs and 18 cats. 4 of those are breed-specific legislation cases, although we're about to have a 5th, but that's also, we're dealing with a lovely council, so that's always nice. We've run 2 free microchipping days, and we've chipped 57 pets during those days and met some really lovely people, and that's one of our community support workers, Jeremy, with some cute box puppies at one of our chipping days, who are gorgeous. We paid for our chips through. We had a little promotion about I Shared the Love wristbands, which I am actually currently wearing. It cost us $5 to buy a microchip, and so we sold wristbands for $5, and they didn't cost us much at all, and we promoted them that if, you can share the love. The first one we did was around Valentine's Day, so share the love. Every wristband that you buy, you're buying a microchip for a pet, and we had a huge response. We sold over 150, I think about 180 wristbands, and that's allowed us to buy a huge stock of chips that we're going to keep running these every sort of basically twice a year or more if we have the resources. So, you've seen what we do. Can your pound or shelter implement a pet retention program? Some things to think about. Can you waive some fees for first-time offenders? I know we always think we need that money so that we can run the shelter, but if that pet isn't reclaimed and you look after it for a while and it takes a while to adopt it and you're feeding it and you're paying for staff and at the end of the day, the vast majority of the people we help, the pet never ends up back in the pound. They're not an ongoing problem. If you can get that pet home, even if you do lose a little bit of money up front, you're probably going to do quite well for yourself, and you're keeping pets in their homes. Can you set up payment plans? I know it can be hard. We would love to see payment plans implemented through the SDRO, but that's obviously not the case now, and it's hard to follow them up. But if you think someone's trustworthy, can you do that? Can you implement interviews for surrenders? So, you know, rather than someone just being able to drop off a pet, they have to make a time and sit down with someone who has a chat to them about the situation. Can you refer them onto resources? Can you find them a trainer that your shelter works with? You know, you might find that a lot of them would actually happily keep their pet if you provide them with some resources that they didn't know existed. Can you go more for the education, less for the enforcement? Obviously, enforcement can come for ongoing problems. Can your shelter or council provide more free or low-cost chipping and desexing? And a big one, as someone mentioned earlier today, I think it was Pets for Life, was saying that some training for your people on the front counter, particularly if you are implementing those, those adoption counselling, or I should say surrender counselling, those people need to be non-judgmental. They need to be able to listen and just provide assistance rather than judgments. So that's me. We've got so many more good news stories than I could show you today. So if you do follow us on Facebook, you'll see a lot of those. If you want to send me an email and ask for any more information, I can absolutely do that, and I'd love to have a chat to you. Thank you.